They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned the hard way that nothing runs thinner than a parent's love when pride and greed enter the room. It was exactly 3 weeks before Thanksgiving when my mother looked me dead in the eye, her voice cold and unyielding, and told me I was no longer welcome at her table. I wasn't just uninvited from a holiday dinner. I was effectively erased from the family. My name is Maya, and until that devastating afternoon, I thought I belonged to a family that loved me. Growing up, my younger sister Chloe was always the golden child. She was beautiful, fragile, and effortlessly captured everyone's attention. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, practically worshipped the ground she walked on. I, on the other hand, was the reliable one. The independent daughter who worked 2 jobs, paid her own way through college, and never asked for a single handout. I thought my independence made them proud, but in reality, it just made me invisible. It made it easy for them to cast me aside when Chloe decided she wanted the spotlight all to herself. The breaking point happened so fast, it left me breathless. Chloe had started dating a man from a prominent family, and my parents were desperate to impress his wealthy relatives. They planned a lavish, high-profile Thanksgiving gala at a rented estate, intending to present Chloe as their crowning achievement. But then came the sudden, cruel realization. Eleanor called me into the living room, not to ask me what dish I was bringing, but to tell me I wouldn't be appearing at all. "We need everything to be absolutely perfect, Maya," my mother said, sipping her tea without even looking at me. "Chloe's future in-laws are very sophisticated people. You've always been a bit outspoken, and your current lifestyle just doesn't fit the image we are trying to present. It's better if you stay home this year. We don't want any embarrassments." My father nodded in agreement from behind his newspaper, not offering a single word of defense for his oldest daughter. The words shattered something deep inside my chest. I wasn't being excluded because of a lack of space. I was being banned because they deemed me unworthy. They thought I was just the struggling, ordinary daughter who could be pushed into the shadows to make Chloe look brighter. But as I stood there, feeling the hot tears prick the corners of my eyes, a heavy secret weighed in my mind. What my parents completely forgot, or rather, what they never bothered to truly understand, was a sacred trust left behind by my late grandfather, a man who saw through their vanity long before he passed away. They thought they had everything figured out. But what they didn't know that day was that their desperate quest for high society was about to collide with a truth that would change our lives forever. The days following my banishment were a dark blur of heartache and heavy realization. I stayed in my small apartment, the silence echoing the profound rejection I felt from the people who were supposed to protect me. I watched from afar via social media as my family posted updates about their grand Thanksgiving preparations. They bought designer clothes, hired high-end caterers, and spoke endlessly about the brilliant future awaiting Chloe. It was as if I never existed. My texts went unanswered. My calls were sent straight to voicemail. I was entirely exposed to the cold reality that my family's love was conditional, based entirely on status and appearance. But pain has a strange way of morphing into quiet strength. As the initial shock wore off, the sadness in my heart hardened into a firm, unyielding resolve. I realized I was done crying for people who viewed me as an embarrassment. It was time to look at the reality of our situation, specifically the legal documents gathering dust in my desk drawer. 5 years ago, my grandfather, my mother's father, passed away. He was a billionaire who despised how materialistic his daughter and son-in-law had become. He saw how they spoiled Chloe and ignored my hard work. On his deathbed, he bypassed my parents entirely and set up a massive, blind family trust worth $15 million, strictly intended for Chloe's future inheritance when she turned 20. But he knew Chloe was reckless with money, and he knew my parents would spend it all before she ever saw a dime. So, he made a stipulation. He appointed me as the sole absolute trustee until Chloe turned 25, or until she got married. Not a single penny could be released without my explicit, notarized signature. I had full legal authority to manage, withhold, or approve the distribution of that entire $15 million fortune. I had kept it quiet all these years because Chloe was still young and I wanted to maintain family peace. My parents knew a trust existed, but in their arrogance, they assumed a high-priced corporate lawyer was managing it. They never bothered to read the fine print. They never realized that the daughter they treated like an outcast held the keys to their entire financial universe. Then, the true nature of their desperation was revealed. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Chloe called me. It wasn't an apology. Her voice was frantic, laced with panic. "Maya, you need to sign some papers immediately," she demanded, completely skipping any pleasantries. "Mom and Dad told me there's an emergency fund in the grandfather trust. We need to withdraw $200,000 right now too. Finalize the catering and pay for my engagement ring deposit. The wedding planners are threatening to cancel." I sat back in my chair, a calm, chilling stillness washing over me. They had banned me from the dinner, yet they expected me to blindly fund their extravagant lifestyle. They had treated me like garbage, completely unaware that they were begging the very person they discarded for a lifeline. The realization hit them like a tidal wave when I softly replied, "I'm sorry, Chloe, but as the sole trustee, I cannot approve an emergency withdrawal for luxury items. It goes against grandfather's guidelines." There was a sharp gasp on the other end of the line, followed by a long, deafening silence. The illusion was about to shatter. The silence didn't last long. Within 20 minutes, my phone exploded with furious calls and texts from my mother and father. When I didn't answer, I heard tires screech outside my apartment building. My parents and Chloe burst through my door, their faces twisted in a mix of absolute rage and profound panic. "What lies are you telling your sister?" my mother screamed, her voice shaking as she threw her designer handbag onto my counter. "How dare you interfere with her future? We need that money cleared by tomorrow morning." I didn't flinch. I walked over to my desk, picked up the official legal execution documents from the trust, and laid them flat on the table. "I'm not lying, Mom," I said, my voice steady, entirely devoid of the fear I used to feel around them. "Read the signature line. Grandfather didn't trust you, and he didn't trust Chloe. I am the sole executor. I control the $15 million, and right now, your behavior proves you are entirely unfit to manage these resources." My father's face turned completely pale as he grabbed the documents, his eyes scanning the legal seals. The reality of what they had done finally hit them. They had spent months alienating, insulting, and ultimately banning the one person who held total control over the wealth they so desperately needed to secure their social standing. Chloe began to cry, realizing her lavish lifestyle was entirely dependent on the sister she had helped cast out. My mother completely changed her tune. The cold, haughty woman vanished, replaced by someone desperate and pleading. "Maya, sweetheart, please," she stammered, reaching out to touch my arm. "We didn't mean those things we said about Thanksgiving. Of course you're family. We want you there. We'll put you right at the center table." I stepped back, gently removing her hand. The gesture was empty, a transparent attempt to manipulate me for money. "No, Eleanor," I said, using her name for the very first time. "You didn't want me when you thought I had nothing. You don't get to want me now just because you found out I have everything. The trust will remain locked. Chloe will receive her allowance when she turns 25 according to the strict legal schedule, and not a penny sooner. Your grand gala is over." They left my apartment in broken, defeated silence, their dreams of high society grandeur thoroughly destroyed by their own arrogance. Justice had been served, not through anger or violence, but through the quiet power of truth. On Thanksgiving Day, I didn't sit at a grand estate surrounded by fake smiles and superficial luxury. Instead, I cooked a quiet dinner in my own apartment, feeling a deep, profound sense of peace. I learned that true value doesn't come from a family name or a $15 million fortune. It comes from self. They tried to lock me out of their world, only to realize I was the one holding the keys all along.